Good evening, I'm Julian Bivens, and I will be discussing the U.S. homelessness crisis. Homelessness in the U.S. has become a major problem over the last few decades. Being one of the wealthiest nations on the planet, you would think we would have solved this problem by now, yet we haven't even scratched the surface. While yes, we have done some things that are helpful, such as set up homeless shelters and welfare programs to help people establish themselves and hopefully regain the stability that everyone needs, but we can do more. This issue for me hits home as I just came out of homelessness. Being homeless my senior year of high school was a challenge. Trying to achieve my dreams of pursuing my education, homelessness discouraged that. Not knowing if I could get kicked out of a rundown motel because my mother could not afford another night while trying to balance my pursuit to find a college to call my next home, it was not easy. But with more assistance, it could have been easier. First, let's start off with the most obvious one, rising housing costs. Across the U.S. over the last 6 years, housing costs has increased steadily. COVID definitely did not help with this phenomenon alongside the impacts of inflation. But this doesn't account for every issue. The Pew Charitable Trust compared homelessness and rent data in 2017 and 2022. In recent years, many metro areas in the U.S. have seen a stark increase in levels of homelessness alongside fast rising rents. At the same time, some localities that saw slower rent growth experienced declines in homelessness. In addition, let's now talk about the subsequent non-increase in income. In the U.S., the average rent and mortgage cost per month is around $2,000, give or take, while the average monthly net income is around $4,000. Throughout the United States, rents have reached all-time highs. Half of renters nationwide now spend at least 30% of their income on rent, and a quarter spend at least 50%. Again, Pew Charitable Trust. Which pretty much means for most Americans, with apartments alone, half of their monthly rent will disappear to rent, not to mention, again, inflation costs, everything, all essential goods have increased. So all middle to lower class Americans are living paycheck to paycheck, which is why you've been seeing a lot of politicians talk about America has almost eliminated the middle class. Additionally, companies have steadily been turning down human labor for AI, which again is leading to fewer jobs. So fewer jobs, rising rent, it doesn't add up. Secondly, we must talk about the next major setback when it comes to ending homelessness. Substance abuse. Substances such as alcohol, crack cocaine, meth, and fentanyl are among some of the most common ones. These issues have been terrorizing the U.S. since about the 1980s, and we have been just fighting a losing battle. Most research shows that around 1/3 of people who are homeless have problems with alcohol and or drugs, and around 2/3 of these people have lifetime histories of drug or alcohol disorders in general. 38% of homeless people abuse alcohol, while 26% of homeless people abuse other drugs. And this was the American Addiction Center in 2024. And a Harvard article followed one of these people and got her story, as it is sadly much too common nowadays. The woman had been sex trafficked since she was very young, was a drug user, and had been abused and neglected or exploited in just about every relationship and she had. And this was by the Harvard Gazette 2024. And a woman named Abigail Judge stated, everything else, recovery, healing, employment, rejoining society, mainstream, might be impossible without it being governmental assistance. Again, the Harvard Gazette. Everyone needs assistance, especially the homeless, and especially the homeless with addiction. Addiction is a disease, and being a disease, these people are disease-ridden. And again, it might not be the cause of homelessness, but it heavily correlates, and we need to recognize that. Lastly, but certainly not least, we must talk about the recent rulings in which states can now cite people for sleeping on the streets. Let's start off with the most glaring issue associated with this. People are homeless, which means they can't afford a home. So what makes people believe that they could pay a fine upwards from $50 to $1,000 in some instances in some cities? Now that is just absurd. I would be prone to believe that if they could afford this fine, they would be at least staying in a hotel or motel. Elected leaders have passed laws allowing cities to issue up to $300 fines, 20 days worth of jail sentences, and repeat offenses, unhoused people sleeping or camping in Publix. 3 homeless people sued the city of 2018 and received multiple citations they were unable to pay. This was by the BBC. In conclusion, I believe the best solution to this problem is to divert funding from other issues. There is zero reason the U.S. should be sending hundreds of billions of dollars to foreign nations for nothing in return. That is just bad business. Instead, we need to focus our efforts here where the U.S. citizens lie. I strongly believe our nation is great, but we can always find somewhere to make improvements. And for me, this is the number one cause to start with. Thank you.